My name is Manuel Velez. I'm the Assistant Professor of Chicano Studies here at Mesa College. And I want to welcome all of you guys to our very first event of the 2008 Chicano Latino Heritage Celebration. Very quickly, just a quick note on the Chicano Latino Heritage Celebration. The Chicano Latino Heritage Celebration is sponsored by the Chicano Studies Program and the Humanities Institute. The purpose of the Chicano Latino Heritage Celebration is to encourage and promote dialogue among our students, our faculty, and our staff regarding issues of the Chicano or Latino community. What we try to do is we try to host a series of events by inviting Chicano scholars, Chicano artists, and Chicano activists to come in and present their works and to speak about their particular experiences to our students in order to encourage dialogue about issues regarding the Chicano community, as well as to expose you to some of the artists and activists and voices that are most prominent in our community today. So today we're very excited to kick off our event by offering you a poetry reading by Lorna de Cervantes. Let me tell you a little bit about Lorna de Cervantes. Lorna de Cervantes comes to us originally from San Jose, California, where she was born in 1954. Growing up in San Jose, California, her life was impacted by a lot of the issues of prevailing racism and very much the resistance to that racism that was going on throughout the 1950s and the 1960s. All of those experiences played a major role in Lorna De's life, and they helped to serve to create a very powerful voice that she then uses in her poetry to speak of the same issues that she has experienced and that are impacting her community. Her first two books, Emplumada and From the Cables of Genocide, have been praised by scholars and critics as masterpieces of Chicana literature, and they have been awarded awards such as the American Book Award and the Latino Literature Award. Lorna de Cervantes is a self-proclaimed Chicana writer, feminist writer, and political writer, and she continues to write poetry today in the same tradition of Emplumada, and her poetry continues to challenge the social and power structures that dominate our life today. Her latest book, Drive, is a collection of poems of her most recent works, and those poems as well continue the tradition of powerful, beautiful, socially aware poetry. So, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome very much Lorna de Cervantes. Thank you.
Welcome. It's wonderful to be here in San Diego, beautiful San Diego, especially today. It's been a while since I've been here. I'd like to start off, I think, with a poem from a new collection that I've been working on. Called 100 word love poems and a bit of grace. This is a fairly new poem. Can you hear me okay? This is a fairly new poem that just won a pushcart prize, best of the magazines, little magazines and small presses. I want to read this poem, Shelling the Pecans, for a dear friend, Chicano poet, scholar, who passed recently, 4th of July. I'm sure there's a part of him that's kind of ironically, grinning about that. He was born on Cinco de Mayo, and he died on 4th of July. Alfred Arteaga. Alfred Arteaga was born in Long Beach, grew up in East LA, came to San Jose where I met him as a young writer and professor, and was a dear friend of mine for over 30 years. We met recently, a few years ago, in the airport, in the San Francisco airport. And he was coming back from getting stem cell treatment for his heart. He had a major heart attack, and 3/4 of his heart had died, had atrophied. And so he was doing experimental stem cell treatments. So we were sort of catching up, and we were at the Chicano art show at the De Young Museum, a wonderful collection of Chicano art from all over. He asked me, so we were at this show, and he asked me, he says, well, is there any of this art, this Chicano art, that inspires you to write a poem? Because he was very interested in where poems come from. And I said, well, actually, there's this movie, this film loop by Chicana filmmaker Lourdes Portillo. And she had these images of women's hands, just women's hands, old, young, doing things, playing guitar, taking apart an engine, cooking, sewing a wedding dress. And the last image was this very old pair of women's hands that with one hand was cracking and shelling a pecan. I don't know if any of you have shelled pecans, but it was my first job when I was 7 years old, helping my grandmother get money, shelling pecan trees in San Jose. It's very, very hard work. The shells are very hard, they poke you, it's very hard work, and the meat looks sort of like a human brain with all this membranes inside. You know, it looks just like a human brain with two halves. And when you crack it, you have to get all those little membranes out, all those little tiny shells inside, and you can split it. And if you have one half of the pecan whole, then your bucket is worth a lot more. You know, it's worth more if you don't break the nut. So if you're really, really, really good, like this old woman's hands, you can not only crack a whole pecan and pull out the shell and just sort of, you know, go like this and take all the shell out and have an absolute whole pecan. You know, that takes a lot of experience. Anyway, this image was just struck me, and I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, this image. Well, meanwhile, you know, and he was having a hard time, you know, walking around, and it was a big exhibit. So we sat there and watched this film loop over and over and over again as we caught up on our divorces and our sort of disastrous relationships through the years. And I sort of thinking, ironically, you know, this is a man, Alfred Arteaga was a man with a big, big heart. So again, it was very ironic that, you know, he died of a heart attack, and he died of heart failure. So all of these images are moving and weaving in this poem, Shelling the Pecans. So after I told him that I was inspired by this film, of course I had to write the poem, and I had to dedicate it to him. And once I did that, it had to be a really, really good poem. So I'm really glad that it won the Pushcart Prize, and it did it while he was still alive to read it. Shelling the Pecans for Alfred Arteaga. I knew what a woman's hand could do. Shred the husk into threads, weave lips together at the seam, rock to hard body, empire to thrust into nave, the native touch, tocando música up the spine of the violin, some song of silk and gut. I knew race was a matter of degree, that inch in the face, that notice of dismissal, how to work all day at a posture, at a stance, at attention, paying attention to none but the all. I put my whole into you, this notch between the breasts, this discovery and treason. Hembra a macho, fixed, oh, defined in the still shell of history, a destiny written in the charts and lost in the unnoticed memories of you. A flicker of change, some small scrimp of light, tu luz, allí, allá, ala ala, and the scoop, your águila eyes sweeping up the dawn's desire. This night I remember shelling the pecans, nothing but a bucket, no ride exceptional, nothing but a dream to entertain us. I dreamed this moment, all the sweet meats in a risen weight, going higher to the rim, the price and the pricing. I could eat what I missed or messed outside, the birds bending to it on a summer day, the great age of my grandmother's banded hand weighing me down, the paper of tutelage blasting me away at that age. And now I still remember how to shuck, how to fetch it, how to step it. Stepping up to you, I ask. The point enters the ventricle without shattering the meat. How a woman on a good day can rip out the heart whole. And since I read that fairly new poem, I'd like to read one of my oldest poems from this first collection, Emplumada. This poem took me 3.5 years to write. I started it when I was 17 years old. I grew up in San Jose, California, Barrio Horseshoe. They called it Barrio Horseshoe because they built the freeway right through it so that you had to go all the way around and go over the overpass to go what used to be across the street, right? You know, they do that in barrios, I'm sure here also too, right? Now you have freeway lanes where there used to be houses and neighborhoods. So I was very young when I wrote this poem, and I sort of associated my own development with the building of this freeway. When I was 5 years old, I knew that I was going to be 19 years old by the time they finished this freeway. And so the whole time I was growing up, I was, sort of charting my own development, my own, coming of age with the building of this freeway. And it's right outside of Bird Avenue, or Bird Ave. I always wondered why my street was the only bilingual sign in the city, Bird Ave. But anyway, this is beneath the shadow of the freeway. And the poem is divided into 6 sections, and I'll just pause in between the sections. Across the street, the freeway, blind worm, wrapping the valley up from Los Altos to Sal Si Puedes. I watched it from my porch, unwinding. Every day at dusk as Grandma watered geraniums, the shadow of the freeway lengthened. We were a woman family, Grandma, our innocent queen, Mama, the swift knight, fearless warrior. Mama wanted to be princess instead. I know that. Even now, she dreams of taffeta and foot-high tiaras. And myself, I could never decide. So I turned to books, those staunch, upright men. I became scribe, translator of foreign mail, interpreting letters from the government, notices of dissolved marriages and welfare stipulations. I paid the bills, did light man work, fixed faucets, insured everything against all leaks. Before rain, I noticed seagulls. They walk in flocks, cautious across lawns, with splayed toes, indecisive beaks. Grandma says seagulls mean storm. In California, in the summer, mockingbirds sing all night. Grandma says they are singing for their nesting wives. They don't leave their families aborrachando. She likes the ways of birds, respects how they show themselves with toast or a whistle. She believes in myths and birds, and she trusts only what she builds with her own hands. She built her own house, cocky, disheveled carpentry, after living for 25 years with a man who tried to kill her. Grandma, from the hills of Santa Barbara, I would open my eyes to see her stir mush in the morning, her hair in loose braids tucked close around her head with a yellow scarf. And Mama said, "It's her own fault getting screwed by a man for that long. Sure as shit wasn't hard." Soft she was, soft. In the night, I would hear it, glass bottles shattering the street, words cracking into shrill screams. Inside my throat, a cold fear as it entered the house in hard, unsteady steps, stopping at my door. My name, bathrobe, slippers. Outside, a 3 a.m. mist, heavy as a breath full of whiskey. "Stop it! Go home! Come inside, Mama! If he comes here again, I'll call the police." Inside, a gray kitten, a touchstone, purring beneath the quilts Grandma stitched from his suits, the patchwork singing of mockingbirds. "You're too soft, always were. You'll get nothing but shit. Baby, don't count on nobody." A mother's wisdom, soft. I haven't changed. Maybe grown more silent, cynical on the outside. Oh, Mama, with what's inside of me, I could wash that all away. I could. But Mama, if you're good to them, they'll be good to you back. Back. The freeway is across the street. It's summer now, and every night I sleep with a gentle man to the hymn of mockingbirds. And in time, I plant geraniums. I tie up my hair into loose braids, and I trust only what I have built with my own hands. This book that I have, my latest drive, the first quartet, is called the first quartet because there's 25 years of work in this book. These are poems, new poems, unpublished poems from 1980 to 2005. It's conceived of as 5 books in one. There's actually 5 complete books in here. And I kind of, I'm very influenced by visual art. My father was an artist, my stepmother's an artist, there is a muralist, and I've been very influenced by visual artists. And so the idea is sort of like a literary triptych, you know, where a triptych, they'll have 3 different paintings, 3 different canvases, and each one has its own composition, but when you hang them together, you see that it creates something else that you wouldn't have seen unless they were hung together. Like that shadow over here is not a cliff, but actually it's the side of this great big building here, and you wouldn't even see it unless the 3 were hung together. So this is the idea behind this book, the 5 books that will eventually be published in paperback, sort of in a permanent gallery hanging all together. And as far as I know, no one else has done this. So there are 5 books. I'm going to read from a long poem. I'm not going to read the whole poem because it would take me a half an hour. But I'm going to read from a long poem that's in this first book called How Far is the War? That is the book that it's from is called How Far is the War? A title that has lost a lot of lost a lot of ironic meaning now that we're actually in war. When I was writing this, we were not. But anyway, this is a long 10-page poem that goes all over the world, mostly in Latin America. It's a poem called Coffee. So it starts out in Guatemala, and in particular, it accounts, it's centered around an account of the massacre in Chiapas, in Actial, in 1995, where 45, mostly women and children, civilians were massacred by paramilitary forces, presumably funded through our tax dollars. This is a long 10-page poem. I'm just going to read a few sections of it. I'll read the beginning. Coffee. In Guatemala, the black buzzard has replaced the quetzal as the national bird. The shadow of a man glides across the countryside, over the deforested plantations, a death cross burnishing history into myth as it scours the medicinal land into coffee. Burial mounds that could be sites of unexcavated knowledge hold only blasted feathers and the molding bones of freedom. Golden epaulets glint in the fluorescent offices. Crystal skulls shine in the eyes of the man with the machete within the sight of an AK-47. Under the rubble of the ruling class, a human heart beats in the palm. The tumba of ritual mercy drums in the thunderclap. A hurricane wind sounds the concha. In Quetzaltenango, foreign interests plot the futures of Mayan hands and Incan gold, while on Wall Street, the black sludge of a people trickles through the cappuccino machines like hissing snakes. 2. Actial, December 22nd, 1997. Bloodied mud sucks the plastic sandals of a child. Velas gutter through the saged prayers in the little church, blasted through with 22 splintered holes the size of a baby's tender fist. Melon heads pop, and the hacking drum of a machete meeting bone counts down the hours of matanza, while somewhere a telephone rings off the hook. The vicar of the diocese calls in 20-minute intervals. 140 federales stand smoking in the twilight. At their feet, the trampled harvest of peasants gleams through the saturated leaves. Homero Tovia Cristiani picks up the phone. I have notified General Jorge Gamboa Solis. Everything is under control. There is no massacre in Actial. And he places the receiver again off the cradle on the well-ordered desk. Meanwhile, a young tzotzil bloodies her knuckles, scratching a hole in the adobe wall of a cave feathered with jaguar fur, where 14 women and children wait, shivering in the dark. An infant picks up the call. The first woman in line gazes into the coked-up eyes of her assassin, projecting his automatic weapon into the ear of the whimpering baby at her breast. 500 years of history gets written in her eyes as a tzotzil mother wedges her sleeping newborn into the hole. She spits on the reddening dirt and covers her loose like a cat. 45 pair of shoes get lost in Actial. Matted hair clings to the coffee plants. Each green leaf another listening ear, each red seed, another eye dislodged from its skull. I hear nothing happened in Actial, and if it did, no one knows who they were. The pre-press machine stands on the ridge of destiny, staring truth in the eye as men lie to the cameras, while 20 yards away, the survivors are speaking the names of the men paid $600 American. Men with no families but a spoon and a copa. Men with no names but the trademarks emblazoned across their chest and their running shoes. I hear 45 graves being dug today. The women form a chain of hearts. They have dried the earth baked with their tears. Each one carries a red mud brick from the killing floor, where the people were hacked into pieces the size of a bat. Here, the bat people, tzotziles, will build a house for their dead and pray. 3. Alonso Vasquez Gomez, Maria Luna Mendez, Rosa Vasquez Luna, Veronica Vasquez Luna, Micaela Vasquez Luna, Juana Vasquez Luna, Juana Luna Vasquez, Maria Jimenez Luna, Susana Jimenez Luna, Miguel Jimenez Perez, Marcela Luna Ruiz, Alejandro Luna Ruiz, Jaime Luna Ruiz, Regina Luna Perez, Roselia Luna Perez, Ignacio Pucush Luna, Micaela Pucush Luna, Victorio Vasquez Gomez, Agustín Gómez Ruiz, Juana Pérez Pérez, Juan Carlos Luna Pérez, Marcela Vasquez Vasquez, Antonia Vasquez Vasquez, Lorenzo Gómez Pérez, Verónica Pérez Oyalte, Sebastián Gómez Pérez, Daniel Gómez Pérez, Pablina Hernández Vázquez, Rosela Gómez Hernández, Graciela Gómez Hernández, Guadalupe Gómez Hernández, María Ruiz Oyalte, Catalina Vázquez Ruiz, Catalina Luna Ruiz, Manuela Paciencia Moreno, Margarito Gómez Paciencia, Rosa Gómez Pérez, Doira Ruiz Gómez, Agustín Ruiz Gómez, Rosa Pérez Pérez, Manuel Vázquez Pérez, Juana Vázquez Pérez, Josefa Vázquez Pérez, Marcela Capote Vázquez, Marcela Capote Ruiz. We are one spirit, one heart, and one mind. Work is the refuge of sadness. Only when we remember does sadness overcome us and we cry. It's better to just keep busy, says Maria Ruiz. The women knead the masa under the heels of their hands, cupping the balls of cornmeal pocked with a few black beans. They pack the bolas into palm-sized portions, golden ears of corn, black eyes of frijol, red tongues of chili. On December 23rd, there is laughter in Porjo. The señoritas giggle at the gringos' questions. ¿Qué tiene? ¿Qué tiene? Meaning, what is inside this humble feast they are preparing for the ones who have come with provisions and witness? What's the matter? ¿Qué tiene? The gringo insists. They smile, a coy reply. Pues nada. Nada. There is nothing in Actial. The federales have stolen the well-packed sacks of coffee, a year's hard labor. They have torn up the clothing, peed on the grain, slaughtered the animals, taken radios, cooking pots, weavings, looms. The same soldiers who shit in the kitchen now sport yellow armbands reading Labor Social. Work is the refuge of sadness. Work is more than the sum of a job. We need to finish off the seed, Michaela heard them shout. She had been praying in the chapel since 6. At 11, she heard the gunfire start. Men and women were on their knees. Some stood up and began to run. Some fell in the chapel. The only way out was the steep embankment. Her mother took her by the hand and carried the 2 youngest. The bullet entered her mother's back. They were found by the children's cries. First, they shot her mother, then the babies. She made no sound under her mother's cooling huipil. Diego, Antonio, y Pedro, more than 50 from Los Chorros, Pechiquil, La Esperanza, Actial. They were dressed in black. The ones in charge had military uniforms. She testifies to the National Human Rights Commission. She testifies to anyone who works to listen. How they strip the dead women and slice their breasts, 4 sticks between their legs, open the wombs, passing the fetuses from machete to machete. Where once she worked to silence her siblings. At 11, Michaela's work is to be the mouth of a people. Behind each of the names is a life lost between the reporter's lines and the photograph's caption. I'm going to leave a little bit of time for questions, comments, maybe even requests. I kind of purposely read those last two poems back to back. One of my earlier poems, very, very autobiographical, at a time when I was thinking that, well, first of all, there weren't any stories like mine at all, and I was feeling like a need to sort of document my family history because it just wasn't in the literature, especially the working mom, and which was the norm, when I grew up. And there was this idea that you could get so deep into the personal that somehow you come out the other side into the universal, although I don't like to use those terms. So this is something that I've been thinking about for many, many decades now. So this last series of poems is Coffee. I have another one called Bananas, and then I have another one that I've been working on called Oil. It's taking me a long time, but it's another very long poem. What these poems are docu-poems. So I sort of went not such a radical transformation for me because I see it as the same thing, but going from writing poetry that's so intensely personal and autobiographical to writing almost journalism accounts, docu-poetry. These are all historically researched, well-researched poems, and sort of writing outside of myself. I've been doing a series of, I just have a couple little prototypes of these little book that I just copied off. I just have a couple of these left. But I've been doing a lot of poems for the Mexicanos, for the undocumented workers, not illegal aliens. Especially being half California Indian. People say, oh, what part of Mexico are you from? I say, California. Give them a little bit of history lesson. Anyway, so I've been doing these series of poems on immigration and the people who were being, especially when I lived in Colorado, Greeley, the meat plants, they had mass deportations. Anyway, here's one of these. This is called Fear of Death. Martha had a fear of death. She wouldn't sleep for the child still caught in her throat. The insomniac who counted stars and crumbs of cake. She couldn't let go. It followed her to school. It drank from her glass of milk in the morning. It soiled her shoes. Martha had a fear of falling asleep and never waking up, of discovering that the migra of the waking world had just asked for her papers and that she'd be hauled into the cell of the earth for processing. Martha had a fear of certain things. The sharp end of the knife, the hissing gas, but mostly of sleep and pain, that final composition of the heart. I will not fear my life. And And this one is goes to a photograph that was taken by a Chicano photographer, Francisco J. Dominguez. Actually, I think he has a piece in the Art of Democracy show that's at the Centro that's going to open, the Centro de la Raza here, right? That's going to open Saturday night. I believe he has a piece in there. But he's been documenting especially the militarization, of the border for the past 8 years. And this is from a photograph that he took of the Holtville burial grounds. The Holtville burial grounds are just outside, not too far from here, I believe, just outside of the Calexico border. There, what it is it's just a bunch of dirt with these big indentations. And in each indentation, there's just a brick with nothing on it, just a brick, and this indentation in the ground in the desert dirt, because this is where all of the undocumented people that they found out in the desert and had died coming over, that didn't have any identification, so they were just left in these unmarked graves there. So Francisco was going down with the border angels, and one of the things that they were doing is they were putting crosses on each one of these burial indentations, just to show these were people. These were people. We might not know their names, but they had names. So this is a poem that I wrote to go with this photograph. It's going to be printed up as a broadside. Poem for the Holtville burial grounds for the undocumented dead. All of you is a cross to bear, single and quantum, solo and quota. The erasures, barely a scratch on the earth, a heart's indentation, a lateral fall under the desert sun. Take this sun, these mothers' hands, these blistered lips and withered femurs. Make a claim for what was written there, a crumbling treaty, a signed agreement, a spit on the street, and a ticket to the last act they will ever perform. Play this lottery and bust the house, the lies, the lives, the lies, until you get it right and she gets away with her life. He gets away with murder. They get away with an entire country. And they are left here, a remembrance, a resistance, a solid will. Read it in the absent eyes, the listless stance, the all about tomorrow, now. We walk among the living, in the dead. We dream about precision, and a watch beeps, unaware, and a justice is determined. Don't separate yourself from them. A glass of water's all it takes. A word, an act of God. Maybe just to break the mood a little bit, this is, I'm reading from Bird Ave and New Mission Poems. The Bird Ave poems are or Bird Avenue poems are one of the books in Drive. So I have some new ones and selections from that in here, as well as some new poems, New Mission poems. I was born in the Mission in district in San Francisco, and I've recently gone back there to live. And here's, I've been doing poetry workshops, intensive poetry workshops, and one of the things we do is write whatever comes to your head, put it in a hat, a little piece of paper, and then everybody draws from it, and everybody has 7 minutes or less to write a poem on whatever comes out of the hat. So you never know what's going to come out of the hat, and as some people discovered today, I am a lifetime non-driver. I've never driven. I always figured we'd be back to horses by now. You know, certainly I knew we were going to be facing this oil crisis. But anyway, I love car metaphors. And one of the great things about this, doing this little exercise is you never know what's going to come out of the hat. And one day this came out of the hat. The 4-barrel carburetor on a 72 Chevy Camaro. Now imagine you have 7 minutes to write a poem. The 4-barrel carburetor on a 72 Chevy Camaro. He could make love like a 4-barrel carburetor on a 72 Chevy Camaro. Man, he could go, pumping up the pistons, discharging with a growl. He wasn't all that to look at, mostly gleaming chrome and wire, slick in the upholstery, and revved. He was a 2-bucket seat palace, a chariot of wiles. He was coming back. He was a place off the map. He was coming home, and he was moving. He was a reserved parking space, a handicapped spot on the heart. He was a ticket waiting to be written, a stop on a dime, promise of forgiveness. He could pick up in the alley, carry away on the charm of his engine, all the draft on a knife point of design and desire, his get up and go, his knack. And kind of a companion piece to that. This one is a hard drive. Esa chica was hard to drive, Reyes spoke, mumbling into his mug. She wouldn't lay 4 on the floor, wouldn't squeal on a dime, or do donuts in the parking lot. Maybe it's time to trade her in, he repeated. Get at least something for my money. Yes, this little chica's always been one to walk. Late at night, between the 7-Eleven and the stars, she'd come to, some somnambulist gymnast in the night, when the shift came off in his hand, and there she was, all chrome and shine and oil. Pero esa chica was hard to drive. She wouldn't do it all. She balked on the turn and wouldn't speed up on the entryway. 1 freeway over 9, a sunny equation on her face. You could do with her as you will, but her will was filled up and was making her go. And I'll end with the title poem. That's both in this book, Drive, as well as this one, Bird Avenue or Bird Ave. This is dedicated to my gang of girls. I know gangs were a lot different back then, fortunately and unfortunately for now, before crack cocaine and automatic weaponry. And one big difference was that it wasn't the guy gangs you had to worry about, it was girl gangs you had to worry about, and it wasn't the girls you had to worry about, it was their mothers you had to worry about. Because whenever anybody got called out, it was the mothers who'd come out and finish the fight, so whenever the mothers showed up, everybody would leave. Nobody wanted to mess with those mothers. Wow, they were real mothers. Anyway, this is dedicated to my homegirls. I was always Bird. People always ask me about the bird imagery and plumada. Well, I was Bird. So this is dedicated to Bird, Tiny, Mousy, Grumpy, Cat Eyes, Flaca, Sleepy, Princess, y Betty la Boop. Life on Bird was tough. Cat Eyes, me, and Mousy, estrolándonos y marchando con missions. Man, I can't get no satisfaction in and out, lost baby, baby, baby. Ooh, baby, baby. It's all summer. We wore tees, tight skirts, tucked teased hair, talked tough rhymes, developed una reputación for the toughest burns on Portland. Tough. From Memorial Day to our Labor Day weekend, man, we had the drug locker of our own developing temples. Highest kites in the district, favors all over town, and we owed nobody shit. For Cat Eyes was beautiful. Mouse made up wizard holes. Nobody over 4'11" could contain her except me. The connection. We always had it. We scored when we wanted. Plus, we were ethical. Esa mouse goes, that first initiation. You gotta understand about ethics. She had it all. She had it all then. She had it then, all total control, banging my head on the blacktop for effect. You flack-a-fay-a face got ethics. And she gave me one of those mouse grins and made lemon crap out of my cheeks before letting me up, all righteous rage. Seen class, need pump, had circumstance. Man, we were better than military. Beauty, brains, and brass. Man, we were the trinity that invented it. The model ran bows. And I could have killed her. Easy. We'd kill it in ourselves, eventually. We knew it all. The code and the symbology, the poetics and the order of place and gesture. We were honed for the killing, primed for the time our ganga de camelias y rosarias would burst. We tended that bust, blistered it, hitched ourselves up to its hearse, and made a bird on the reins of some wild ride. From the tracks to Willow Glen and back, man, we were running our own private miracle mile. Man, it was tough, with Cat Eyes on the corner, buttering 'em up, all stupid and blind. Me and Mouse, always ready to take advantage of a relevant situation. Don't fuck with us was our motto. We're here to serve was the ruse. Listen, watch, be silent was the conquest's hidden code. Man, it was tough to know it all, and we haven't learned anything since.
One more time, thank you so much for Lorna. We got some time. If you have any questions, any comments, anything that you want to mention, or anything you want to ask Lorna D, this is now the time. Any questions?
Yes, Xavier.
As somebody who's like can be considered one of the founders of Chicano poetry, what do you think of this newer generation of Chicano poets?
I'm very excited. I'm very energized. People have started asking me that question about. People started asking me that question about 30 years ago, especially like well, where do you see Chicano poetry headed? And I think this is the culmination of where Chicano poetry was headed 30 years ago. It's like it's like fresh water constantly coming in. just in the same way that the waves of immigration is like fresh water coming in and adding to the cultura. It's the same with the poetry. We're sort of building, we're building on each other, and we're taking off from each other's wings. And so I'm very, very excited. I'm going to be listening to one of your homeboys here, San Diego homeboy, Tomas Riley. Hope to be hearing him Saturday night, and his compañera Leticia Hernandez, young Chicana, Latina poet now in the Mission District. That's just one example of a poet, spoken word artist doing some very, very interesting work. So one of the great things for me was growing up in San Jose, and being a poet in San Jose. There was at that point, there was you could do anything you wanted because there wasn't a school of poetry in San Jose, right? You could do, the freedom was incredible. Just to do whatever you wanted. And so I see that, also here, the variety of voices, the variety of styles, the energy and the courage too. So I have lots of fans. Look me up in MySpace, Facebook, my blogs. I talk a lot about some of my favorite poets, and there's links there to my friends. Check them out. Some of these groups and stuff. Spoken word, blurring the borders. Blurring the borders. So yeah.
Any other questions? Anybody else? No one?
I thought there was a hand around here.
So what year did your grandmother, the pecan, cracking of the pecans, what year was your grandmother doing that?
That must have been in the early 60s. Because I was only about 6 or 7 years old. Yeah, so that was in the early 60s.
Any others over here?
Yes, back here.
Could you just spell a name off of it,
Pardon?
please? Can you spell a name off of it?
The guy who wrote Don Quixote, Man of La Mancha, Cervantes, Cervantes. Lorna D, Lorna And if you just Google up Lorna Dee, my pages should come up too. Yeah, lots of free poems on there, including what I read. Especially my main blog on Blogspot. Been keeping a blog for a long, long time. Yes.
You said back in San Jose when you were writing poetry, you felt it was such a freedom and nobody had done it before. Do you feel a constriction now that you're famous with it?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I always have to make it play. I always have to make it not so darn serious. Yeah, or I get blocked. Yeah, it's an interesting question. Yeah, I always have to make it be play. I think that's why I do these intensive writing workshops too, so I have a chance to play. Yeah, as well. By the way, if any of you are into writing, I have these wonderful handmade pens here, Lanier pens. They're made in the Bay Area, and they're made out of hardwoods. And I have magic pens. And I've had them since I was 14 years old. I get this pen and I get it in my head that I can't write a bad poem in this pen because it's my magic pen. And if I just have my magic pen, I can write that coffee poem. Well, I wrote the coffee poem, but read because I had my magic pen. So in case anyone needs a magic pen, I have some beautiful, beautiful, very rare. These pens will last 100 years. A gift to give. But anyway.
A question to start?
Yes.
Have you been inspired to write anything about the up and coming election?
I was approached by the Obama people early on to record a video spot, And I was kind of moving in the middle of it, so I thought, well, that's my excuse, for not doing it. And then I was asked recently to do some bilingual lyrics for him. And actually, now there is a YouTube. You can YouTube it, look it up. Obama's there doing the cumbia. They got it spliced to it's very cute. He's there doing the cumbia. And somebody wrote these lyrics. So that's kind of interesting. I have to admit, I'm all for Jeffersonian democracy, indigenous American democracy. As it was conceived by the Iroquois Confederacy, actual one person, one vote. I believe we should be voting on war. We should be voting on issues. We should be voting on healthcare. We should all be, our education is supposed to be for democracy, right? I believe that most of us are literate and should become literate, for more than just working for the corporations that rule us. So I would like to see the end of representational democracy. No politicians at all. One person, one vote on real things, real goods and services, real issues, and educate ourselves and educate everybody else about them. Because these guys, they just go and get drunk and have big parties in Washington and everything. You can't possibly read these thousands of pages of these bills. They have aides that read a little bit, and that person reads a little bit, and that person reads a little bit, but you can't read the whole thing, because they're out partying all the time. Sorry.
Any other comments? Any other questions? All right. Before
there was a question here.
I know that you write a lot about sexism, discrimination. So can you explain that history? Why did you write about that?
Because it affected me, not just being a woman of color, but being a woman of the welfare class, being an indigenous person, indigenous American person, and especially being a woman. I was constantly told all the things I could not do. You cannot do this because you're a girl. You cannot do this because you're Mexican. You cannot do this because you're Indian. You cannot, you can't go to college. You go to college. Make me laugh. No, you cannot. So I grew up, everybody telling me everything I could not do. So the way to get me to do something is to tell me I cannot do it. So I became an active feminist, an activist when I was 14, 15 years old. By the time I was 15 years old, I was part of a debate team for the early NOW, National Organization of Women, a long time ago. And I used to travel up and down the state and debate in colleges and whatnot when I was only 16 years old. I think because my grandmother was an indigenous American Californian, Chumash, and I believe the roots of American feminism is indigenous American Indian. So I owe my feminism to my grandmother and the example that she led. Very strong woman.
Very good. Any other questions?
Right?
One more. The coffee piece, very strong, powerful piece. And I saw you perform it, I think in 2000, some would say.
The whole thing.
The whole thing, and it was very emotional for a lot
Very
of people
emotional.
in the crowd. And for you as well.
Very emotional.
Is that the typical response? Do people come up to you after and ask you about that? Specifically when you list the names of the people that were slaughtered, that is very powerful.
Yes, there is a taboo in most indigenous cultures, and certainly for the Tzotzils and for the Mayas, there is a taboo against speaking the names of the dead. However, what they did is they passed out a list of the dead to everybody, who we were protesting in the Mexican consulate. So what we did is we put the names on crosses and circled the encircled the Mexican consulate, and this was in Denver. And I was just struck by these names and struck by them who said, we normally would not speak the names of the dead, but we want people to know that these were people and that they had names, and we want them to be remembered. So this is what I literally just copied and pasted from the email and just pasted it into the poem. And then I read it. I've read the whole poem that I had so far written, and including the names, and they come down. I feel these spirits very, very strongly. But it's an example of poetry that's beyond me. It's got nothing to do with me. I'm just like these pens,
Okay, before I let you go, I want to thank several people here, first of all, for making this happen. First of all, I'd like to thank the Humanities Institute and Dr. Cesar Lopez, who runs the Humanities Institute. I'd very much like to thank the Chicano Studies Department, and very much like to thank the Black Studies Department as well for their support. I definitely want to thank my compadre Brent Beltran and Calaca Press and the Red Calaca Arts Collective for their help. And I especially want to thank all of you here who came today to listen to this wonderful poetry, to listen to Lorna V. Cervantes' voice. Thank you very much, all of you, and thank you very much, Lorna.